Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Constant Agitation, our weekly podcast where we talk about photography, art, and whatever comes to our mind.
Yes.
I'm here. My name is Jimmy, as always, joined by Eva. How are you?
Hi guys. We have an exciting episode today. We're gonna talk about mainly three things, but probably other things in between, like always. We've been quite busy through the week trying to set up our first black and white printing darkroom at home. We're going to talk a little bit about that. We are going to present to you a Swedish photographer that we found quite recently when we did our trip to the Swedish Lapland, Sven Hörnell. And then Jimmy is gonna tell us about his idea of setting up making a nighttime Sunny 16. So somehow a reference guide that can let us take photos at night easier without having to use a light meter.
Yes.
That's the program for today.
I mean, that's maybe a bit over-promising. So, yeah, but it's a cool idea, I think. We will get to it towards the end eventually. So we start with the darkroom stuff.
Yes. So what have you been doing? What have you been doing mostly?
Yeah. So we there's this kind of like local eBay website that I love, and maybe too much. Maybe it's problematic. I'm kind of addicted to it because you can find all sorts of things on it, and for a really good price sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And I think just checking. If the audio is a bit too low, please let us know in the comments, as always.
Mm-hmm.
One day, I won't have to ask you for technical feedback, but for now, it is what it is. So, yeah, I found this enlarger that basically looks like a what do you call it? Back home we used to have these wood space heaters.
Mm-hmm.
And they had this like metal tank
Mm-hmm.
where you fill it with gasoline or diesel or some sort of a fuel, and it just trickles down droplets and keeps the fire alive, basically.
Uh-huh.
And so it looks like that, the thing that I got, it looks like that. But it doesn't have gasoline, and it has a light bulb
Mm-hmm.
and an enlarger lens on the other side, on the bottom. And I think they're pretty common. I just haven't seen them. Usually, we're familiar with the big ones of the labs and dark rooms, professional dark rooms,
Mm-hmm.
where you have built-in filters and all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But this one is pretty simple. It has a bellow adjustment thingy that you can focus with. It was pretty cheap. What it was like 10 euros, exactly. Yeah. So that was pretty sweet. I picked it up from an old guy, very nice guy. And we got it home, and we got some paper,
Yeah.
Ilford paper, and we downloaded. We don't have a light bulb, a safe light.
Yeah.
So we downloaded this app that you can control the hue
Mm-hmm.
of the screen. You can just
hoping that the hue would be enoughly pure for not actually, make the paper foggy. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we did some tests. We sacrificed the paper to see if the light is safe. It was. Now, although I'm thinking that if you increase the intensity of the light, it might fog the paper still.
Mm-hmm.
The app, I think, is called Light. I can check.
That's pretty meta.
Yeah. It might have a different name on the App Store, but this is what it looks like. I don't know if you can see it. It's just a light. And you can control it, and then you make your screen red, and that's your safe light.
Mm-hmm.
Because the bulb is more expensive than the enlarger. Like I was looking on that site, and it's like the cheapest red safe light is about 30 euros,
Mm-hmm.
while the enlarger was 10.
Yeah, the other option is to buy one of the safe light kind of attachments. You can put any kind of bulb inside, but you need to have the kind of the entourage around it that will make it to be red and safe. So that's also cost money. So
that's more expensive than
that's
the
even
bulb.
more expensive.
That's
yeah.
around 60 euros. And we, what else did we look at? Yeah, our the topic photographer from the last week,
Mm-hmm.
Brandon Barry, he did a video on how to make a lightroom in your house, and he used like a cover of like this Piff Puff. Do you remember Piff Puff? Yeah, or whatever.
Like a can,
lid.
any kind of can that is red, or you can paint it red, and that will be on top of your light. It will work.
Yeah.
You can put it on top of the light and ceiling.
So I didn't have any of those lying around, so I couldn't test with that. But yeah, you can get creative with it. And then we did a few tests. Apparently, I need a timer for the, for the enlarger, for the bulb,
Yeah.
when it turns on and off?
Yeah, I mean, I think we didn't think we might have needed from the get-go, because my previous experience is that the exposures were extremely long on the terms of like 10 seconds, 20 seconds, something like that. So you can kind of estimate with the phone or using a timer and do it manually.
Yeah.
But we kind of found out that we needed much more faster exposures with at least the setup we have right now.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. The enlarger that we have on the lens, there's an aperture control. So you can basically let in more light or less light depending on what you're trying to do. And if you put it to the smallest aperture, then you have some time to do like a few seconds difference in exposure. But the other problem that we face that is it's not tight. It's not light tight. So it's leaking light all over the bathroom. We were doing it in the bathroom. And so it's reflecting off the walls. And
yeah, because bathrooms have white walls, so that's not the best thing. So
and the shower door is made of glass.
So we were like, why is it coming up not so contrasty? Like, what happened? Like, and then you spend a whole night doing different tests and then trying to get it light tight enough, or at least as much as possible.
Yeah, and here's another tip. Don't use trays that are not supposed to be trays. I mean, you can. We use the aluminum disposable ones that you can use for grill or whatever. Like not to grill in them, but on outdoor meals and whatever, you can use these aluminum foil trays. And they worked fine until they didn't. So the one with the fix inside of it, the fixer kind of was too abrasive and it made holes in the bottom.
Yes. I mean, it took like almost the whole night you working on them, but it's still like, I remember when we were thinking, okay, what is the cheapest trays we can get to do this tonight without having to go to a photo store, which we don't have available in the city. I was like, let's get these trays. And I was like, I think the old chemistry student of the old student in me of chemistry, I'm thinking aluminum is gonna react with something in those chemicals for sure. And I remember that this happened to me once, that I needed to put gas. I needed to transport gasoline from one place to another place, and I had the amazing idea of putting the gasoline in a plastic cup.
Okay.
It melted in my hands.
Oy.
It didn't get hot or anything.
No.
It just destroyed it. Like, I was putting the gasoline and then it's like, it just did it. And I'm like, I didn't expect this to happen. Of course, it reacts with that kind of plastic, and it just like dissolves it. And it's like, so when we were thinking about chemicals and aluminum, I'm not sure if it's going to work. And it kind of held up enough time.
It held up, yeah. I think if you double the fixer tray, that might get you through like the 12 hours of time because I think the chemicals after 12 hours sitting in the tray, you're going to have to dispose of them anyway. So, I think for the period of working time, using 2 trays, if you're in a pinch, will be just fine for the fixer. The developer one didn't have any problems. Actually stayed pretty clean. But we did a bunch of prints. And we had fun with it. We should have maybe had them here. Maybe we can show them to the camera. Right? We didn't think about that.
Aren't they next to you there somewhere?
Are they? No, I have some Instax from yesterday.
No, those are not.
Yesterday was fun. We did some cool stuff. These are some Instax. We were at Eva's workplace doing some videos for SciFest.
Yeah, the science festival of the city, which now has turned out to be the science festival of the country, since we're going to go online.
Cool.
Hence, we have to make a video. It's cannot be on site anymore, or at least this year.
It's pretty exciting.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be really cool.
Yeah, how can the listeners, if somebody's interested? Maybe?
Oh yeah, actually, that's great. So the local science festival in Uppsala this year is going global on the internet. So there is going to be a digital floor with science stands for anybody around the world that wants to visit it. And we can leave a link down below of this video. But if anybody wants to have more updates about the SciFest, they can follow me on Twitter. because I put a lot of things about work and science communication there, and for sure I'm gonna be tweeting about the festival and the times when the booths are gonna open and when we're gonna be actually in the booth in a Zoom meeting to meet people and talk about bacteria and all that stuff.
Cool.
So I can leave all the links in the description below, and if you're interested, then maybe please follow on Twitter, and then you can get updated there. That'd be cool.
That'd be pretty cool. I might be also sitting at home and watching.
Nice. Yeah, very cool.
So it's pretty fun. Like with the printing stuff, I feel like if you just have fun with it, you'll get creative really quick, and you might have some different effects. I mean, if accuracy is not your main goal,
of course, yeah.
It's pretty wild what kind of results you can get.
I think what has maybe made more impression on me is that with a very simple setup, and this really, guys, we're telling you, like, my apartment is not optimized for these kind of things. It's a very small apartment. My bathroom is really small, although it doesn't have a window, which is good. But with a little bit of space, if you can fit one of these small enlargers, which is, in this case, this one is for 35, but I believe there are also small enlargers for 35 and 120. You buy this small paper, so the platform of the enlarger doesn't have to be very big. And with that, and then a bunch of dark sheets that you can put around the walls, if so, and making sure that there's not a lot of spill light from the door itself of the bathroom, you can get super creative and do a lot of stuff with relatively cheap and simple equipment. And it's just really cool to see what happens if I expose this part of the paper and I develop maybe this part before, and then I develop after a little bit more, after I play with it, perhaps with a little bit more of light. You can get really cool stuff. And you also had the idea of do like a dual kind of like photos, where you have one that is in positive and then you do a contact print and then you get the negative, so you get like a diptych of a specific type of print, which I think is really cool, and we are going to experiment with that a little bit. I also really like watercolors and other kind of painting, so you were thinking, maybe we can use the developer as it would be paint and a way or something like that. It would be really, really interesting to explore the possibilities of even with this simple setup.
Yeah, I'm sending some of the pictures that I took on my phone to the computer. Maybe we can take a look at them. Hold on, let me see if I can take this one and put it right here on a clean desktop.
By the way, Miguel Ru is with us one more week. Welcome, Miguel. And he's saying, I developed film in a bucket. Yeah, I cannot get more simple than working in a bucket, right?
I guess bucket makes more sense because it's also plastic.
Yeah, I mean, he's mentioning film. I don't know, he also means paper. But I guess, what he is mentioning with this is that you can have a super, super simple setup and still get like good results. I want to take this opportunity to encourage someone. If someone are like, I'm not sure if I want to do something at home, go ahead. It's not that complicated, really.
No, you hear a lot of stuff about people like saying that, this is impossible and blah, blah, blah. It's not. I mean, it is if you're trying to get super accurate results.
Yeah, and if you really want like lab quality, it's going to take more effort, more equipment, more work, and more experimentation. But if you just want to get into it and then just try,
don't be afraid.
Yeah, don't be afraid.
Give it a try. Always also like look around. You might have some great deals on the equipment you need to get started, and you'll have a lot of fun, especially nowadays where we're all like locked in the house. This is the enlarger that I got. It's pretty tiny. Like how tall do you think it is? It's about like
50 centimeters.
Yeah. These were the trays that I was using, and these are some of the results. This one is kind of flat. I guess there was some leaking, because you can see there's not much separation in the tone here. This one was I had an idea to fold the paper and then just get the developer in the center, so you get these ripple effects. This one I dropped some developer on the paper. This is the proper print on the left side. And on the right side, you can see that I just dropped some stuff on it. And so I develop at different rates. It's pretty cool. I like that one.
That's really, really nice. I like it.
Yeah. And so yeah, have fun. Do some experiments.
Yeah.
And you'll be surprised what you get.
And also, it's just so, I don't know, the feeling that you created this print. It didn't exist before. You had the negative and now you made it being there. And I also, I'm thinking now, if we have this possibility, will I actually shoot in a different way? Thinking that there might be some things that I would want to have as a prime, let's say, as a prime theme for printing experiments or for working with different techniques in the darkroom. That might also be part of it, right?
Yeah. I mean, exactly. You just have to start getting to do it. And as you do it,
you see the possibilities.
The possibilities open up.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can't just keep thinking about it and something like...
No, exactly. But it was just interesting that you selected one of these, like, I would say, throwaway negatives. We take some photos that are just to see if a camera is working or something, and then you take one of these negatives, and then the thing that might be in the negative would be really, it would be not beautiful just for a normal photo, but if you use it as the base for doing some experiments, like with the different chemicals or with the way of developing, it can actually look super cool.
Yeah. Miguel's saying experimenting is cool, but the price is quite expensive. I'm not sure. I mean, the paper that I bought with the fixer bottle
was like 20 something euros, you said?
Yeah, 20 euros, 20, 30 euros.
And that should be for quite a long time.
100 sheets of paper.
And then the
fixer
1
will
liter
just
of fixer.
last,
yeah.
You know.
And then the developer was about maybe 15 euros, I think.
Yeah, but
when we bought it.
I think the fixer is the same for the film.
Yeah.
The problem is the bottle fixer we have is at my place.
Yeah.
And I was already going to buy the paper, so I bought I bought another bottle fixer because, you know, we use a lot of it. But
Miguel is saying 100 sheets for 20 euros, expired Soviet.
No, it was actually
new paper.
Ilford 10 by 15 centimeters.
Yeah, so the postcard size and multi-grade one. But
Yeah.
it was RC paper, that we must mention. I think we talk a little bit about it. There's different kind of papers. There are some papers that are very good to do kind of quick work because they dry really quickly and they don't need so much like washing after and all the stuff.
Yeah.
That's like, you know, paper-based papers. And then these RC papers are resin based. So they are not so good for archival purposes long time, but are very good to work in this way that we're saying. This experimenting, you want to try this thing, try this other thing, get it dry quickly.
Yeah.
And those papers are a little bit cheaper than the paper that we know.
Yeah. I mean, we haven't worked with, I haven't worked with different paper. But it's pretty nice, this one. I can't complain about it.
I love the texture.
Yeah.
It's a matte, or semi-glossy, I would say.
I mean, if I was going to get a print and a small print like that, maybe I found something somewhere, I'll be happy with this. I don't know, is this gonna not last as long?
It starts degrading after like maybe 30, 40 years. That's what I read online.
I don't have that much left anyways.
Yeah.
Personally speaking, I don't know about you. Yeah, and also speaking of expired stuff, you can find expired paper.
Yeah, of course.
Online. And I'm waiting to bid on some stuff as soon as they're closer to the
date.
To the date of the yeah. But I think that's about it for this topic. What do you think? Anything else you would like to add?
No, just encourage people to see the simplicity of it and just go ahead and experiment if possible, even with the cheapest material you can find.
Absolutely. I mean, if you're learning, it doesn't matter what you're using, and you might be surprised by the results. Sometimes the imperfections will surprise you. Yesterday, speaking of imperfections, stuff like that, one of my favorite photographers, current working photographers, Dino Kuznik, I really like his stuff. He posted on Instagram some photos that he took back home you can. I think you can't see it because it was a story, but he posted some photos that he traveled, and on his way back, the film was X-rayed, and there was some kind of effect on the photos. It's you have to look close to see it. First time we looked at it, we couldn't see. I went back to the photos and I looked at them, and they looked like waves.
All right.
I don't know if you noticed them, very faint.
Uh-huh.
But then he was saying that it kind of gave this effect to the photos that made it look like it's
Spire or old
no,
or-
it's like what did he say? I'm gonna butcher the words, but it's to the effects that the how the Chernobyl like incident kind of, you know,
affected life and
affected
affected the reality, then those same things. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
that's a nice parallel.
yeah. So yeah, you can always, you know, find beauty in imperfection. I mean, I think that's a big part of art in general. Yeah. So
We have Matis here with us, and Cedric has joined us too. So
and Cherie. Hey everybody,
Cherie,
thank
yeah.
you so much for joining us live. We hope you like this new setup with both of us on camera the whole time. I think this is I can stay in the conversation with you. I don't have to keep switching or forget to
switch back.
and somebody speaking and the other person is doing something weird. Now everything will be exposed. Yeah. You want to tell me?
Cherie's just asking if we are doing this podcast every Friday at this time.
Yes.
yes. So you
Yes.
know,
Unle-
she's from California. Nice.
Nice. Unless something else comes up, it should be the same time every week. We plan, as this podcast grows, we plan on inviting people that want to tell us about their work and their art and all that kind of stuff. But we feel like we should have more audience in order to be, before we start doing that,
Inviting people.
before we start inviting people. So it's more, makes sense to them to talk to us. And also we're ironing out all the technical issues with every episode. So when we have a guest, if they agree to do it live, we can do it with confidence that
Smooth.
everything will...
Hopefully.
Yeah. Here's the thing. So let's get into the next topic. Some of
Yes.
you know that we went on a road trip to the Arctic Circle.
Yes.
And it was super fun. We still haven't finished scanning and working on all the photos. We're taking our time with it because we took like 600 photos or something.
A lot of rolls.
Yeah, a lot of 41, 42.
42 rolls. Yeah.
S-
Everything has been developed though.
Yeah,
So
everything's been developed, and some of it were scanned more than once. Some of it. Sorry about that. My phone fell, and some of it were. We have some issues here and there, but a lot of it looks really good. But since it's a lot of work, we didn't want to like hammer it so hard because you know, when you have a lot of like big volume of work, you start to get frustrated.
yeah,
And it takes the fun out of it, and we didn't want to. I personally didn't want to.
get like a burnout also. Yeah,
I didn't
it's,
want to have negative feelings toward the project.
Yeah, I understand that, and it was a bit. We talked about it, frustrating to try to find the best way to scan things, and the best way that we found is not the fastest, but it's definitely the best. So it's better that we take our time, and hopefully one day we'll come out with a very nice either video or presenting our. Hopefully maybe a magazine or something. That would be the ideal thing. But in that trip, we actually came across a photographer. So you guys have an idea. It's Corona times, and even though you might have heard that Sweden has a different approach and things are kind of open, the places that we were kind of deserted. There wasn't a lot of people. There was a lot of things that were closed. So we wandered a lot in nature, and one of the days we were desperately trying to look for a place where we can sit down next to a fire or something, have a warm coffee and rest a bit, because it was kind of cold and we were out and sleeping in the car some of the days. And we were in a very, very, very tiny town in the very north of Sweden called Abisko. It's known for having an aurora watch station. Also is the entry to a very big national park, the Abisko National Park. And is very well known for also skiing and stuff. But all the ski resorts are closed, obviously, because of Corona times. So it was kind of hard to find a place where we could just sit and have a coffee. But we found a place, a small souvenir shop that had a little corner with a coffee machine. We got our coffee and we sat down, and then we find that there was a photography book there in front of us in the table. I was like, oh, I don't know this name. So we started just browsing this book, and it was by a Swedish author. His name is Sven Hörnell, and the photos were amazing. We were looking through the photos, and I was like, who is this person? I never heard of it. The photos are so good, and they also feel like these photos through a lot of different time points. So I started looking a little bit more about him, and in the book there was a little bio, and it turns out that he's a photographer that has worked in that area he's now sadly passed away some time ago in the early 90s, but he worked continuously for 50 years solely photographing the area, the Swedish Lapland, also a bit of Norwegian Lapland, even going into Finland as well. There are two very big national parks in the north of Sweden. Is the Abisko National Park, as I mentioned, but also Sarek National Park. The biggest mountain of the country, the Kebnekaise, is also in that area. And he lived in a really small village in the precise border between Norway and Sweden called Riksgränsen. He decided that he wanted to live there, and he wanted to spend his life photographing the outdoors, the nature, and the surroundings of the Swedish Lapland. And his body of work is big. It's amazing. So I was fascinated by it, and I was showing you, and you were also, these photos are so good. And then I came back home, and I wanted to know more about him, and I couldn't find anything. I was so surprised that this person that, for as far as I could tell, or we could get to know from the book and some information online, he's a little bit like the Ansel Adams of Sweden. Spent many years from the 40s to the 90s in the middle of nowhere wilderness shooting. He worked a lot with the military, that they are the people that do expeditions into the nature as well. And he had so much photography done, very good. It's not just that it's a lot of it, it's a lot of it very good. And yet there's not so much information about him. There is not a lot of body of work available online to check. And I believe the books about his work, they're only published in Swedish, as far as I know. So I was like, why is this happening? I want the world to know about this photographer, and I want the world to know about this work and the landscapes, because they're amazing.
Yeah, that book was really beautiful. Sorry, I'm trying to log into my Facebook, but I'm unable to. The reason why I'm trying to do that is because one of the only sources that we found was a Facebook page and an archived website. But somehow, for some reason, my Facebook is being very strange.
Yeah, so as far as I understood, of course, after he passed away, the family kind of took over the legacy of his work. They have a small shop, souvenir plus prints and books in Kiruna, that one of the daughters is running, I believe. So they have a company on his name, and they used to have a website, but that website went down, I think, in 2016, 2017, because the last web archive that we could find is 2016, so it's no longer active. Then I found another company that used to sell prints of his photos. That's the one that set up the Facebook page, but now that page doesn't handle his work either. So it's all very strange. Because we are not talking about just any other, portrait photographer. There were a lot of people working like that in cities over the 50s, 60s, 70s, I believe that his body of work is unique and so good.
Yeah. Were you able to find any photos of the links you sent me in preparation?
What do you want? Sorry?
Like a photo gallery, because I can't find a photo gallery.
A photo gallery? There is no photo gallery per se.
Yeah.
There is the website, the web archive, and then the Facebook page.
All right.
Maybe you guys, if you can check, I think Cedric said that he is actually looking on the Facebook page.
Yeah, so this is the Facebook page. These are quite different than the photos we saw.
The thing is that we cannot go more in because the web archive only kind of saves the the front pages of each one of the pages.
Mhm.
So I tried to get into the further in, and there was no more information. We saw a lot of aerials, a lot of aerials photos, and
Mhm.
then later we learned that he learned to pilot his plane, a very small plane. He got the license to pilot the plane, and then he developed the skill of driving the plane, flying it, and taking photos at the same time, which is crazy to me. That you can frame, you can compose, and then you can fly at the same time. Maybe it's not that difficult. Yeah, those are the books.
I mean, definitely very prolific photographer. Too bad we can't seem to be able to show you more.
If you put maybe Sven Hörnell in the Google and go to images, there are some that we can see.
Okay, I will do that. You mentioned something about him being kind of like the Ansel Adams of, and there's a lot of parallels. But before we get criticized for saying that, I mean, Ansel did a lot of work in terms of the science of the photography. He devised the zone system.
Yeah.
So on that front,
I wasn't talking about that.
Yeah,
of course
just
not.
to clarify.
Yeah. I was talking more about the work on representing the nature and the national parks of Sweden, which is what also Ansel was known for. He did amazing work into representing the national parks of the U.S. Incredible body of work, black and white. Here it's much more color work, but in that way, the parallelism in that how important his contribution to getting to know the country was, in a sense.
Yeah, I'm looking at these different sites and I can't see. This is the store?
Yeah, no, in the store there are no photos of the photos either.
No photos. You have to buy
this
the
one
books.
You can see a Bill Spiel. You can go and they will actually put a presentation of photos. So when you go to, you can book a time to go to one of the rooms inside the shop and then see a presentation of photos, because they don't have all of them in exhibition, I guess. But if you just put Sven Hörnell and then images in Google, there are some that are being sold, like that one, for example, of the river in the spring.
This one?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, for example, that one was on the book we saw.
There was so many good photos. It's a shame that we can't take a look at them here. This is the Lapporten, which is like Lapland Gate, kind of. And it's a very, very nice mountain range that just kind of have this gap in it. So many iconic photos here. We tried to get there. We were not able to. It was so freezing.
You cannot get by road. That's the also amazing thing about the photography that this guy did. There is no other way to access the places that he photographed unless you are in expeditions that take like a week, 2 weeks into the wilderness, which is so cool. He used to do it either by himself with the small groups and also with the military, as I mentioned. Rangers. Yeah, with the Rangers also.
The land there, you have, like you maybe know, but for us, it was incredibly cold. It was minus 20 degrees. A lot of the photos were done in summertime, wintertime, but there was a lot of work in the winter. I meant to say summer and spring. Yeah. But also in the winter, there was one encounter, or maybe a few encounters, but we saw a few photos with a bear. Yeah, with that was like a few meters away from him.
Yeah, there was an explanation of what happened with that. It was cool.
Yeah, really cool stuff. So.
I don't know. I was just perhaps very surprised. I not to say that I know so much about the history of Swedish photographers, of course not. But I don't know, when I came across the book, it's like, why I have not seen these photos before somewhere. You know, I learned about Sweden, about the history of Sweden and the nature of Sweden, because I like hiking and going around backpacking, and I had not seen those photos before.
No, that's him. Yes. He's with the 2 Hasselblads on his neck. And you can see in this photo where he's going. It's crazy.
that you have all the equipment and then going crampon and up the glaciers with his eyes. It's just crazy. He mostly worked with Hasselblad and also Canon F3.
You mean Nikon?
Sorry, Nikon. What the heck do I say with Canon? No. You're gonna break up with me? Oh my god. No. Nikon F3. I mean, because we were saying, no, we have a Nikon F3, and he shot with Nikon F3.
Yeah, but somehow our pictures still suck. Just kidding. So what's the takeaway here?
The takeaway is there might be gems and very, very cool work by people that they are not making it beyond the local area. Or I guess people in the 50s, 60s, 70s in Sweden, they knew about him because he was a contemporary photographer back then. And I'm sure his photographs were like in the media and he was talked about. But then, he passed away. How the legacy of a photographer is worked with after makes a big difference into how much availability there is to the work, right?
Mm-hmm.
In a sense. So not to criticize the family or anything. I don't know the kind of means they have or what do they really want to do with the work, or maybe what he wanted to do with the work after he passed away. We don't know anything about that. But to me, it's a bit of a shame that there is no more availability to it.
Yeah, what you're trying to say is that this work definitely deserves more exposure.
Yeah.
And the fact that we had to kind of stumble into this souvenir store,
find a book
seeking
about
warmth and just find the book there. I mean, it's super cool that they had the book there.
Mm-hmm.
There was a bunch of other books, and this one is the one that we spent the most of the time on. It was, in my opinion, the best book in that place, and one of the better books I've seen, photo books at least, that I've seen ever.
Mm-hmm.
Really, the images that we're able to find online does not show you anything like of how beautiful the photos that you can find in that book. So maybe the takeaway is also that look at books.
Yeah, maybe if you go to a second-hand shop, you might have a book about this guy. You never know. So if you see a Sven Hörnell, then maybe you can remember. Oh, maybe that sounds Swedish. Is this the Swedish guy?
Don't tell people about second-hand books.
No.
So this is like one of my favorite things too, because you can find a lot of nice photo books in there, and usually like these kind of books are expensive. In second-hand store, they're very affordable.
Did you see Miguel's comment? He says so there is a thing with the cold and medium format. The cameras do not work because the oil gets frozen and the different gears just don't move.
Well, I can attest to that.
Yeah, right?
My RZ was struggling very much in that trip. But I mean, it worked for the most part. The Fuji GW did not care at all about the cold. It just kept shooting.
Maybe it doesn't have oil in the gears or something. I don't know.
I don't know either.
The Mamiya C220 didn't give any issues either.
Yeah, it was. They worked so, and it was super cold. And also, we were like getting in the car.
It was very humid and cold and humid.
Yeah, so I don't know if that's for the better or worst, but
the F3s also did well, no problem whatsoever.
Yeah, the F3 didn't. Yeah, but he was mentioning.
But he also says, I'm curious if he used 35mm under his coat or he used another trick. I think they work well outside also. I mean, I don't know for how long though, but.
Yeah, but as you said, he was on weeks long expeditions. So maybe they required some CLA more often than if not used in such conditions. But he seemed to have a big body of work, and which we can't access. But
it is a pity.
There's a few books out there.
Even though we couldn't see so much online, I thought it was worth it to just mention it and talk about it, and maybe one day you will see something from him somewhere. Yeah,
we will try definitely to maybe get more
books or something.
More books or more resources. Maybe we can reach out and see if we can have maybe we can talk to the family and say, hey,
yes,
why don't you do an Instagram page or something? But that's pretty cool. And check it out. That's my segue. I'm the best at segues. No. To the next topic. What do you want to talk about next? Should we get into the Sunny 16 at night? That's the worst name ever.
Did I call it Sunny 16 at night?
No, but like that's how what I wrote in my
Nighttime
notes,
Sunny 16.
which is worse. It's like not worse, but equally bad.
Do you want to call it? Wait for it. Nighty 16.
No, no. I don't know what to call it. If you guys have a better name, yeah. But it's basically what would you do if you want to take a photo without a meter at night? Is that possible? Is there a good way? I mean, nowadays most people will not encounter that problem because we all have smartphones, and usually
Just forget about smartphones.
yeah, I agree. I mean, here's the thing: like, when is this useful? When you don't have a smartphone or a light meter, and you're using an old camera with no built-in meter, which is an extremely rare case. But
some of us still do.
yeah, and actually, this was a question that someone asked me on Discord. I was asking for people like, do you have any questions, things that I can research and maybe like, or maybe I already have information about that I can help you with. I was thinking of an idea for a video for a channel. And I did record this video, but I was not in a good headspace that day, so I just discarded the footage because whatever. Speaking of which, we plan on making more videos. I swear, I promise, it's coming. Yeah. So what do you do?
So Miguel is saying he takes 3-4 pictures with different timing if it's medium format. I'll take more if it's 35 millimeter.
You can always do that for sure, but what if you don't want to do that? Like sometimes, very rarely, I do bracket my photos, but most of the times I don't. Like, unless I thought something weird happened, I'm usually taking one photo of whatever, even if it's an important photo. Feel like if you meet it right and you wait for or like you go for the proper conditions for what you're doing, you wouldn't need you don't necessarily need to take more than one photo. It's always good to take more than one if you can, but I feel like I already take so many photos that I don't want to bracket. It just makes it more how do you say, like it complicates the process for me more than it makes it easier. And we were watching a video the other day of a famous photographer who was showing contact sheets. I was like, what? I was surprised that he takes so many like repeated photos.
Yeah. That was interesting because it's someone that you normally don't see how they are working. You don't see how many photos they take to get one photo that they show you.
Yeah.
And for this first time, we saw contact sheets, and I was like, look at it. There is so many photos of the same subject of each one. And he's like, it's basically one roll per photo.
Yeah, one photo per roll or two. And again, like, is that a good thing or bad thing? No, nobody cares. Like, whatever you do to get the final results, that's up to you. Like, there's no judgment here. It's just that I was surprised. I didn't expect it.
Yeah, me neither.
The photos looked simple enough to kind of
be a one-off.
Yeah. But I mean, kudos for him to be like transparent about it.
Yeah. And this photographer, we're not talking here about bracketing. I think he more played a little bit more with framings and with the composition of the shot itself, and then he chooses the one he likes the most. So I feel like he works more taking more photos of the same scene just to get different aspects and different angles and stuff like that, more than bracketing for metering, which is what we're talking about now.
Yeah, I mean, that's it's almost the same thing, kind of. Some photos did look bracketed though.
Okay.
I didn't really like.
We didn't stop so much, and then
I was like, whoa. But still, really, they were really good photos. I mean, I feel like we should say who we're talking about. It's not like we're not talking like ill.
No, of course not.
We're talking about Willem Verbeek. He posted a last video. He posted about working in a dark room, and he took some photos of Cape Cod. Beautiful photos, really beautiful prints. I really like Willem's work. One of the few like photographers that are famous on YouTube that I actually like their work. Even though it's not necessarily the work that I used to like, but I kind of like fell in love with this style. And sometimes I find myself emulating his work as well. It kind of just feels nice to take those photos. So yeah, cool video and cool, very cool photos. But so here's the thing. When I started shooting film, I got myself a Pentax spot meter, reflective spot meter. And I love that thing. You know what I mean? It's just, it is definitely slower than other meters. Like, so if you're using Incident or whatever, or like a built-in camera, even though the camera built-in light meter is basically the same as a spot reflective meter with more bells and whistles as well. The light meter, the simplicity of it gives you much more broader understanding of the scene and how light is. And I usually just have it on my neck. Even when I'm not taking a photo, I just put it to my eye and read the scene. And that's how it was in the beginning. I still do it sometimes if I find myself in a unusual scene. And the more I did that, the more I started to know, like, oh, this is going to be this. So I like midday sky is going to be this exposure value. Nighttime is going to be this exposure value next to a storefront inside a dim room and all that kind of thing. You start to, because the way it works, you point it and you click a button and it will give you a single number with one dot or two dots or no dots. And that basically is telling you the light in down to a third of a stop increment. I hope you're still following me.
Yes.
What it's basically telling you is that if I point the meter on my face right here, it will, let's say, in this light settings, it will be 6 or 5, somewhere in that range. And then it has rings on it where you can just say, okay, I'm using ISO 800 and shutter speed. I'm sorry, not shutter speed. Aperture, whatever you decide. Well, actually, the two rings. Are you gonna bring it? Oh, you're running low on battery. So you just choose your ISO, your sensitivity, and your light value. No, it's fine. Okay. And then it will tell you which settings to use. And the settings go around the ring, so you can just match them. You can say, like, whatever works for f2.8, 1/25th of a second will work with f1.4, 2/50th of a second, or f4, 60th of a second. So it just lines them up, and then you just pick whatever settings you want to do. So I think that from there, you can start to know one exposure that you are always comfortable with. So for example, if you're shooting next to a storefront at night, that's going to give you about a 7 exposure value, which is going to translate to 1/25th of a second, f1.8 at ISO 800.
Actually, this is going to be very useful for Cherie, which is mentioning that she just got a Cinestill 800T roll, and she's anxious about taking nighttime photos because she's worried about messing up. She says, of course, this is part of the learning process, but then this kind of guideline that you're presenting here would actually be useful for her. Yeah,
and I hope so. You might still mess up.
Of course, but it's a guideline.
But here's you can go to the link I left in the description, and you can look at this table, and you can memorize. You can have it, you can read about it before you leave the house, and decide, or you can print it, have it stuck to your camera, taped to the camera on a small piece of paper. And then what you can do is that here you have in sections, you have daylight, you have outdoor natural light, outdoor artificial light, though this now here we're getting down in the exposure values. Daytime, you're always going to be, these are going to be your shadows in daytime. Like you're hardly going to get an 8 exposure value in the daytime. But during the day, the sky, these are the skies, exposure values, and the bright surfaces. And you can see like typical scene, cloudy, bright, no shadows, 13. Usually if you point the light meter at the sky and it's a bit, maybe a bit cloudy, not super bright, the actual sky will be at 13. And and everything around is going to be around these values. But you can kind of understand, have a vague idea of what your levels are going to be at. And then it helps if you understand the zone system as well. Because the zone system is basically helps you understand your metering and implement it creatively in your photos. You can do it, for example, on a digital camera by having a preview on the screen and say like, even though that the meter on the bottom is going to be like, oh, you're underexposing by 2 stops, or you're overexposing by 1 stop or 2 stops, but you kind of like the end result on the screen. Maybe you want it to be high key, maybe you want it to be dark.
Yeah.
And so when you know that, when you know it in your head, and you don't have a preview, a digital preview, you can kind of visualize
how the result will be.
How it's going to be. So this is not just useful for nighttime photography, it's also useful for all kinds of photography. When you're trying to create a specific look, you can dial in your settings in a way to help you achieve that.
When I was starting out with photography, I used to hang out with a group of photographers. I was like 18, 19, and they had like these meetups with photographers in Granada where I was studying. And I remember this photographer that he told me he was maybe working on photography for 10, 15 years. And he said that the key to being a good photographer, it's understanding the light available and what you can do with it. And he said, yeah, this is a very easy concept to have in mind or to think about or even to say. But he said that he didn't really understand light until quite some years into his photography journey. And he said that for him, it was kind of like a revelation that he one morning woke up and he opened his eyes and he saw the light in a different way that he has been seeing it before. And his photography improved and changed so much from that moment onwards, because it's like in his brain it clicked to see the surroundings as light instead of as the surroundings as they are. And he said for him as a photographer that makes such a difference. And I think this is very related to what you're saying about that if you learn to see the light in this way, it's gonna help you in any photography situation, not just at night, of course.
So I wrote down these two kind of settings that if you're shooting at ISO 800 or ISO 400, which this one is basically redundant because if we drop the ISO to 400, we double the time going from 125th to 60th. And this is for a bright night scene, meaning that you're in a high street, in the center of your city, and there's a lot of stores, maybe some street lights. And if you're taking a photo of an object standing close to
some light source,
to a window store, unless it has super blazing lights or like a very extreme light or maybe with colors, that might give you weird results. But in general, if you're shooting at ISO 800, 1.8, 1/25th of a second, you're good to go. Just walk around and take photos. You might have to drop it down if you go in a secluded alleyway, and you have to judge with your eye. So here on the chart, it's telling you that night, home interiors, average light, school, auditorium, blah blah blah. Actually, I need to double check my what I'm saying. So I'm going to go grab the light meter.
All right.
You talk to them.
Okay. Yeah, guys. So the conversation here, you guys are talking about what kind of light meter and that the light meter in the smartphone gave you weird results. I agree with you, Miguel, because I also had not so much good results with using the smartphone. I think maybe for an average light situation, it's gonna be approximately okay, but I think for some tricky light situations, it might not really be so reliable. So a dedicated light meter always works better, of course. We work with a spot meter, but we also have an incident light meter, seconic. That's the type of light meter that you put into the place that you are going to photograph, so you are reading the light that is falling into the subject, as opposed to the spot meter that Jimmy is going to talk about. Is talking about that is a reflected light meter, so you read of the light that's reflected off surfaces.
Yeah. So these are light charts are basically kind of like averaging.
Yeah.
It's always going to be different. So these settings that I'm telling you, ISO 800 f1.8 at 1/125th of a second, you're falling in between these two numbers, between 5 and 6.
Mm-hmm.
And 5 and 6 are night home. 5 is night home interiors, average light score, short auditorium. So auditorium is a dark place. But also it's different because where your people are seating, it's going to be much darker than whatever is
On the scene.
on the scene. So these are kind of like averaging the scene.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And if you go brighter, so like fairs, amusement parks, home interiors, there's more light falling on the whole scene. But it's not that, like, one stop difference is not that much, and it's the difference between the highlights maybe and the mids and the shadows in your scene.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're using good films that handle light nicely, like something like Portra is really good. Kodak Vision, brilliant film.
Mm-hmm.
These films will do you good, and they won't give you any problems at night. Even the more consumer film, which are not that common in high speed, like 800,
Mm-hmm.
but Lomo makes 800 film,
Mm-hmm.
which is, a lot of people hate on Lomo, but the fact that you have an 800 relatively
Well performing, yeah.
good priced, film. I mean, there is not much competition at this point. You have Portra 800, Lomo 800.
And I think Portra and Lomo are not the same kind of consumers. I would say they would be different clients.
The price is big difference.
Very different, yeah.
Yeah, but what other 800 film do we have? You have Cine Still, which is like falls in
It's
the
really
same range.
expensive.
Yeah, which I actually do recommend that it's beautiful, but if you want to get rid of the halations, just rate it at 1600, and then you won't overexpose the film,
Yeah.
but you will still get really, really, really good results. Even at 3200, it's a beautiful film.
Mm-hmm.
Don't go 3 stops. 3 stops, it's gonna be not nice. But
Yeah.
2 stops is really good. So what do we get from here? Basically, this is your starting point. And if you're shooting at ISO 400, this is your starting point. And you go down from there. Just like the Sunny 16,
Mm-hmm.
you have a
F16.
F16 at the brightest,
Mm-hmm.
and then you go down. So if it's sunny, F16, in some cases you might have to go
Over.
higher.
Mm-hmm.
And you might have to go to F22 or double your shutter speed. If it's a sunny day in the snow, you go higher than F16. But normal sunny day, F16, a bit cloudy, F11.
A bit more cloudy on the shade, F8.
F8 or shade F8, and overcast, dark, whatever, F4.
5.6 F4 then.
And you're matching your shutter speed to your ISO.
Here
I couldn't come up with a nice relation between the ISO and the shutter speed.
You just learn it. It's just 2 numbers.
Just memorize one set of settings, and then adjust from there. So, for example, we have this. I'm gonna copy it. Again, we're working with a bright night scene, and we wanna stop down our aperture to 2.8. So here, let's say 2.8. So this is gonna have to go down to 30th of a second to compensate for the light. So once you're working with a camera with the manual settings, usually you always adjust one click in one side and one click in the opposite side. So if you drop your aperture in one side, do the opposite thing in the other setting.
On the other side, yeah.
And these shorts should help you. This one, as you can see here, it's a connection not secure. So I felt iffy about linking it.
It's because are you using Firefox?
I am using
They
Firefox.
they have upgraded Firefox, and now, before they didn't used to tell you this, but
Oh.
now if they don't have a specific plugin in their website setting that it would be HTTPS, it shows you this, but most of the places are okay.
All right, so I will link it below as well. And because I kind of like this one. This one is more simplistic. It's giving you one number, and there's more stuff that you can read.
Sherry is asking, what would F8 look like? It would be a really slow shutter speed.
F8 at night?
Yeah.
Well, here's the thing. You can maybe work with it if you kind of...
Tripod? You work with tripod, obviously.
If you're working with a tripod, absolutely. But then you have to account for reciprocity.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we haven't talked about that.
So the cool thing about this light meter is that I already have the settings dialed in, and I can just look. It will be between 4 and 8 seconds.
Yes.
So it will be like 5 seconds. It will be between 1/8 and 1/4 of a second. So I will opt for 1/4 of a second.
Yes. I think 1/4 of a second you're still within non-reciprocity.
No,
reciprocity for most films. Yeah.
Most
Do you want to
current
mention
films.
a little bit what that is in case someone is not aware of it?
Reciprocity.
Yeah.
So the thing about reciprocity is that the longer your film is exposed to light, the less sensitive it gets.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say if you take an exposure of 1/25th of a second, that's 1/25th of a second,
Very
exposure done, nothing happened, no reciprocity, failure. But then let's say you're going to expose for 4 seconds on some films, same thing. The film sensitivity will behave. For example, Fuji Pro 400H, rest in peace. Reciprocity was 4 seconds.
4 seconds.
I know because it was my favorite film and I used to shoot it all the time. And so at 4 seconds, you don't have to change anything. You don't have to compensate. So if I take a reading on this light meter and it says that I have to, let's say I'm going to shoot the same scene. So it's telling me ISO, because it's ISO 400 shooting box speed, 2.8, 30th of a second. But I decide to go to f16 because I want to do that. And then I can look and it's telling me 1 second.
You're still good.
Yeah, I'm still good.
F32?
F32, 4 seconds. It's still good. Let's get a
Darker
scene. So I'm shooting a darker scene, right? And I look here and it's telling me at f16, at f32, I'm going to have to shoot
8
somewhere
seconds.
about 15 seconds.
15 seconds.
Okay? So once the shutter is open and we're past 4 seconds, the film sensitivity to light starts to decline.
Mm-hmm.
And the film gets slower and slower. Usually they tell you on a film data sheet, which I recommend anybody who's shooting film, if you're using, pick a stock that you like and learn it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, just work with it until you know exactly how it's going to behave. This is one of the best tips I can give you. And learn that film, read the data sheet. And sometimes because you have to adjust, like ideally, you have to add in color filters for different lights and all that kind of stuff. And it's all in the data sheet.
Yeah.
Some of the information might be too technical, but just look at it and try to understand as much as you can.
Yes.
You'll be happy. So what they say is that after you cross 4 seconds, you add 1 stop of aperture. So basically, I have to double the amount of light if I'm shooting at 8 seconds versus 4 seconds. So if I'm shooting at f16 and it says, okay, you have to expose for 8 seconds, I drop it to f11 and now I'm shooting the same length.
Double amount of light.
But more light is coming in.
But if you don't want to change your aperture, which a lot of times we are in that situation, which is I want to use f22 because I want to get a very big depth of field.
Or I'm already maxed out.
Yeah, you're
I'm
maxed
already
out.
shooting at whatever big aperture my lens has.
Yeah, and then you
What do
just double the amount of time. So
Exactly.
it's just that there is not a linear relationship all the way till infinite between the sensitivity of the film and the time you're exposing it.
Yeah.
So at some point you are going to have to give it more than what
More
you would
than double.
expect. Yeah.
I think in the panorama video, we did some math
Yeah.
where I think in a bunch of videos when we went out and shot, I ran into reciprocity problems.
Mm-hmm.
And it was Oh, that now it makes sense. I was like, I'm still thinking about what I was reading,
Yeah.
and now I realized that I didn't adjust it back to 400.
You were at 800
I
still.
was at
Yeah,
800.
okay.
So yeah. So now for this metering, if we're like shooting a bright night scene at f16, we're still in the 2-second range,
Mm-hmm.
but that's a bright night scene, which is really good.
Quite good. Sherry is actually asking if there is any what if it's shooting an f 1.8 versus f8, if it makes a big difference in the quality of the detail you get, or they come out fairly the same.
Oh, that's it. Well, from 2.8 and f8 is a big difference.
1.8, yeah, and to f8, yeah.
Yeah, that's a big difference in your depth of field. Again, it depends on the format you're shooting. So in Micro Four Thirds, for example, this one, you're gonna notice a much bigger difference in the depth of field when you jump from 1.8 to f8. But on medium format, you're still gonna have relatively shallow depth of field, given you have a more natural to kind of tele focal length,
Mm-hmm.
on your lens, which is the common thing with the medium format lenses, because they have to cover the, that's a whole complete different topic. But what's gonna happen basically with you if you're changing your aperture from f8 to from 1.8 to 8, is that you're gonna, well, the best thing is to look on your lens. Usually it will give you there is some sort of guide on the cameras,
yeah,
and it's gonna tell you how much is gonna be in focus.
Focus scale, yeah.
For basically you can use that for zone focusing as well. But in terms of sharpness, yes, you will also have a different effect.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say you're shooting a faraway building or a faraway subject. Shooting wide open is not going to give you the sharpest image. So you have to stop down, because you're focusing at a faraway object to get it sharper. So that's another thing that you have to take into account. Some lenses perform differently than other, so you have to experiment with your tools and your equipment and see what is the sweet spot for your lens. Some lenses perform best at f8, some lenses perform better at f1.8. So I mean, but for distant subject, in most cases, the narrower the aperture, the sharper the subject is going to be at a further distance.
Of course, experiment a little bit and see your lens what it does. But the main difference between using 1.8 to using 8 is that your depth of field changes, and therefore what is in focus and what gets most detail in the picture is going to be different.
Yeah, but don't sleep on the fact that distant object needs a smaller
yes,
aperture.
of course it does. Yeah.
It will make
even
a big
if
difference.
You think you are focusing in something in the distance at a very open aperture, you are gonna get fuzziness and you are gonna get loss of detail. Yeah,
and then if you it applies also the opposite way. So if you go very narrow in the aperture, so like f32, some lenses go to f64 and higher. These are usually large format lenses, so most people are not going to be using them nowadays. But you can get into, what's it called? Refraction? I think that's what it's called.
Yeah.
Lens refraction. So you're going to have some weirdness in the image. I shot f32 often with the Fuji GW. Never had an issue with refraction. But again, it's an amazing lens. So yeah, experiment and write down what you're doing. And learn your equipment.
Yeah.
Which is a really good thing that kind of counters our hold on, let me fix this, which is in contrast with our last week episode that we were talking about buying a new camera. Somebody was asking, does there have to be a next camera? No, it's actually might arguably be better if you work all your life with a single camera and maybe one or two lenses. And because it's going to be like walking, like once you're a baby, you don't know how to walk. You have to figure it out. And then you're like,
how
tumbling
does this work
around.
And this leg.
But now you just walk. You don't think about it. You take it for granted. You want to work with your gear enough, spend enough hours. They say the 10,000 hour principle.
And the 10,000 photo principle.
Yeah. So you work with something for 10,000 hours and it will feel like second nature. So I think that's good advice
Mm-hmm.
is to pick something that you like and stick with it and perfect it as much as you can.
Indeed.
Anything else I missed in the chat while I was rambling endlessly about this?
No, they're just saying that thank you so much. It's very informative. Cherie says she has maybe some problem with math, but there's not so much math involved in this. Just a tiny bit.
Yeah, I mean, my brain was racing too much. I think maybe if, 100,000 photos, Cedric is saying that his teacher used to say.
100,000?
100,000 photos. I mean, yeah, if you're shooting digital, for sure. I guess. Imagine, I mean, I don't know. I don't know how close I am to the 100,000 photos in
100,000
in
photos
film.
is a lot of photos.
That's a fortune, especially if you imagine if you're an old-timey 8 by 10 photographer.
Mm-hmm. Whoa.
How are you gonna finance that?
Where are you gonna put all those photos physically?
Right? I mean, they're thin enough to be stacked, but
Maybe.
yeah,
A lot of photos.
yeah, yeah. So, I think before I move on, I'm gonna just go back to this exposure value thingy.
I lost my light.
Your light died.
I think so.
Rest in peace, your light. What happened?
I don't know. Maybe it thought we were talking for too long. No. I think it's dead.
Oh, yeah.
It's okay.
I can put this one like
No,
this.
You need to have your light.
This is okay. Yeah. Going back to this one. What you need to remember is figure out the settings for one single camera. So, and if you have, let's say, when you go out to shoot at night, you have an f3 or not necessarily an f3, an SLR. Okay, you have an SLR, and you have a 1.8 lens. That's the base. That's what you have. You're walking around at ISO 800, 1.8, 1/25th of a second on bright scenes at night.
At night.
If it gets slightly darker,
Drop aperture.
you drop the aperture. You can't drop the aperture
No,
at
that's
the
true.
1.8. You go to 60th.
Yeah, you drop
So-
the shutter speed.
60 if darker, 30 if darker, and then 15th if very dark. So because here, like, we're talking about these are darker objects here. And also, by the way, in this list you can see the light values of the moon, the subject under crescent moon, subject under half moon. So here, if you don't have any
-6.
yeah,
What kind of light is that?
exactly, you just keep compensating. So you just drop one stop, one stop, one stop, one stop. So you keep dropping. So you have to do, depends, like what you know what you're gonna shoot. There's no point of learning all of this. Like, I'm not gonna go out necessarily and shoot without a meter under crescent moon or something like that. But I kind of know that it's about 10 stops under a bright night scene. So I will drop my exposure 10 stops. So I will go from 1/25th, 60th, and count my way down and shoot my exposure. So these are the settings that you'll be working with. And if you're working with ISO 400, so you just lose the first one. You just you start at 60th if bright. So if this is bright, and then 30th if darker, 15th if very dark, and then 8th, 4th. So you kind of have to judge it by eye. These charts are your friend. Experiment.
Yes.
Do a test roll.
Yeah.
And then you'll figure it out.
Yeah.
It's not impossible. It's basically the same thing as the Sunny 16. It's just more tricky because cameras like film any light sensitive material, whether it being a digital sensor or a film, they appreciate light.
Yes.
And at night there is less light. So, I mean, it's hard to mess up during the daytime. So that's why the Sunny 16 is kind of like a standard and it works.
Safe proof, yeah.
And the sun is a constant source of light.
Mm-hmm.
So you can reliably say that when the sun is going to be out, it's going to be this much light.
Mm-hmm.
But depending on how many lights you have around, what kind of lights they are, it's going to vary. And
But I promise you, if you go out and you test and you do this long enough, it's going to become second nature. You are going to know, oh, this is approximately this, oh, this is bright, or this is a bit darker, or this is very dark. You will get a sense for it, I'm sure. And of course, if you, before you, for example, imagine you have a roll of Cinestill 800 that you really want to make sure you shoot right, you can always take on a roll of 400 and then go out and use this rule to make a text roll, and then you just know that you only have to compensate by one stop because you're shooting 800 instead of 400.
Yeah.
So that's a very nice and helpful guide.
Also push film. Don't be afraid to push film. Film can be pushed. It's pretty. I never pushed film at night because I thought it's gonna be. I did one time before. I wasn't sure what I was doing. It wasn't good. But then, as I learned better, we pushed, as we said. We pushed Portra 400 to 32,000, and it was dark.
3200.
Sorry, 3200.
Yes.
And it was very dark.
It was very dark.
And some photos did come out. It wasn't the best roll, but I was also relying on the RZ meter, which kind of, it's sometimes hit or miss at night.
And in cold.
Yeah, but I'm planning to do some, maybe we should go out and shoot a video about exposing at night.
Before the spring comes.
Yeah. How do you like that, guys?
Yes,
maybe we
that
can
would
do
be
a
very
video
nice.
and I will just take photos without a meter and you can see what you can expect.
We want to do that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Cool. Anything else we wanted to cover today?
No, actually that was what we had on the menu for today.
Cool.
I think it's very helpful to look at the light like this and also see it in the terms of Sunny 16 rule-ish, Sunny 16 rule-y, which is just, you have a baseline and then from that baseline you move up or you move down depending on the light conditions. So very cool, Jimmy. Thank you very much.
You are welcome. And this is, I kind of want to talk about one photo from Ansel Adams.
The moon above that village.
Yeah,
I was thinking about that when you mentioned that nobody's gonna work without a light meter on moonlight.
You'll be surprised. One of the most famous Ansel Adams photo. Basically, it worked because he knew the exposure value of the moon. So, full moon is 14 exposure value.
Yeah.
According to this chart.
Yeah.
Ansel did his testing with this light meter or a similar one. I'm pretty sure I've seen photos with them holding this one exactly. Mm-hmm. So you just point it at the moon, take a reading, and he knew that he wanted the moon to be at this exposure value. So if it's at 14, it doesn't mean that he has to put it in the middle and expose for that. No, it means that understanding the zone system, you have a like a line of values. So 5 is your middle gray.
Yes.
Skin tones have to be at 6. So whatever you meter, if you see the skin, let's say it gives you whatever number, move it one step to the side. I mean, it might be too complicated if you don't have the same meter.
Yeah.
But that's kind of the idea. The moon is the highlight of the image. So he placed it
at a highlighted exposure value.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then he just took the photo without a meter. And then he, of course, did his magic in the dark room. And there's a documentary on that. Short documentary on YouTube. Yeah.
We can leave a link.
Yeah, or we can leave a link. About how he took that photo. And it can be that useful. So, highly recommended. Study the chart, do your own readings, and
test a bit around.
Have them locked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Yeah. I guess that's it for today. We've been on for quite a while now. Thank you so much for watching, as
Yes.
always, and joining us and giving us your really lovely input in the chat. And we'll see you next week.
Yeah, back here next Friday. On the meantime, if you have any topics you want us to talk about, anything you want to cover in the next episode, you can of course reach us either in the channel or in Instagram or in the email or wherever you want.
Yep.
Thank
Hope
you.
you have a nice week.
Yes.
Take care.
Bye bye.
Bye.